Val Leitner is the president of Blue Oven Kitchens. She was born in New Jersey and moved to Cape Coral, Florida, where she finished high school. She received her undergraduate degree in English and Classical Studies from the University of Florida. Her education continued with Southern Studies at the University of Mississippi. Her education also included a 6-month apprenticeship with an artisan goat cheese maker in Maine. Like so many of us, Val felt the pull and came back to Gainesville. Welcome, Val.
Thank you.
I'm always curious, what was it about Gainesville that pulled you back?
Well, I really love this area, and having gone to school here and lived here when not in school, I gained a real appreciation for the area, and especially all of the natural resources and experiences that we have here. So, for example, Gainesville Hawthorne Trail and things like that.
I've had the privilege of watching you over the last few years and your compadres as you've put together this dream of Blue Oven Kitchens, and it's been really great to kind of watch you and hear you check in with the county commission and see the progress of it. But it's my understanding that back in 2009 that you were interested in catering yourself. Kind of tell us how that led to kind of the people you met and the idea of Blue Oven Kitchens.
Well, when I moved back from Maine, I was trying to figure out employment, and food is something that I can do. I worked as a professional pastry baker in Mississippi, and then I figured that I could get into catering, but the major problem I ran into pretty quickly was that I didn't have access to a kitchen. And I finally found one, but it was down in Micanopy, and it was a far drive, and the schedule of the catering made that difficult to always go down there and use it. So I started looking around Gainesville for kitchens that I could rent and to see how feasible that was. And so as a result, a realtor introduced myself and Maya Garner, who owns the Jones, because her and I were both looking at the same space. And so he rightly thought that it might be more feasible for both of us to use the space if we used it together.
And I had Maya on the show a few years ago.
That's right.
Talking about this. So now Maya had the Jones at that time.
Yes.
And she just felt like she needed more kitchen space than the restaurant had? Or?
Yes, because the Jones has done well for a long time, and their kitchen is very small. And so they needed to have more kitchen space for their catering and additional prep work and so on.
So that was an introduction made in heaven, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was great. And so her and I met, and then I'm not sure if she was already going to the Sustainable Alachua County Food Working Group meetings or not, but I know that when I started going, she was there, and that's also how I met Stephanie Samara Hamblin, who does the Hogtown Homegrown newsletter and also has her own jam business, the Illegal Jam Company. And so then her and Maya and I and Gretchen McIntyre of the Citizens Co-op, we all were working towards this idea of a community kitchen that others at that group were interested in. And so I then approached Santa Fe about, because they have their SEED, their Center for Innovation and Economic Development,
right,
which is a business incubator. And I thought, well, maybe they have kitchen space that they're renting out. So then I went and talked with Doug Jones, and he said, no, we don't have a kitchen space. And so Doug has been extremely supportive along the way of us exploring this idea of putting together an inspected kitchen and an incubator. And when we did, we found out that there were at the time about 100 across the country. So we started to talk with them and get their feasibility studies, which they kindly gave us, and went and visited them, several of them.
Now, and I want to hear more about who you visited, but when you say an inspected kitchen, for folks that are watching that don't know, you can't just start a catering business out of your home kitchen, is that right?
That's right. And in Florida, as of last July 2011, state of Florida passed what they call the Cottage Food Bill. So there are certain items in certain scenarios that you can make and sell to the public without using a kitchen which is inspected by one state health agency or another. But there are many others that you cannot do that with. Or even if you wanted to bake cookies, which is on the Cottage Food Bill list, and you wanted to do it wholesale or not sell at a farmer's market or out of your home, you would have to have an inspected space.
I see. So you discovered that nationally there were, I think you mentioned there were 100 such incubators. Can you tell me the ones that caught your eye and that you visited?
Yes, we in August of 2009, Maya, Gretchen, and I took a trip up to North Carolina with some assistance from Santa Fe, and we visited Blue Ridge Food Ventures, which is, I think, one of the top 5 incubators in the country. And they, since they opened in 2006, I think that they helped with the economic development of almost $4 million worth of food sales, which is a lot of jams and bonbons.
Yeah.
So
and pie.
and pie and mustard and the things that they were making there. So so we went and visited them in Asheville, and then there was, I didn't want to limit myself to just really successful incubators. There's one up in Boone, up in the northwest corner of North Carolina that had closed. And so I went up and talked with them as well, and to find out what made the incubator unsuccessful.
What did you find the difference between the two were? What made one work and the other not?
Well, by and large, with those incubators and others across the country, it really boils down to finances and management. And in the case of the Northwestern North Carolina incubator, it was management. And but others, you know, it's finances. And you know, every incubator that we have spoken to, and there are for-profit ones and there are non-profit ones, and I've spoken with both types. But all of them say for nonprofits, you know, do not get into debt, because your incubator will always, if it's successful, it will always just operate on the line from red to black, because ultimately you're a nonprofit.
Right. And that's how nonprofits operate, most of them.
Yes.
Well, that's interesting, and of course it almost always comes down also to the people involved and
yes.
Their dedication and willingness to work. Okay, so you came back armed with that information.
We did, and then we looked into others as well, like La Cocina in California and the food incubator in Colorado and several others.
And then there came a time when you decided to gather some information, some detail about what was going on, and I understand you got involved with Alachua County
yes.
through our sustainability office, Sean McClendon.
Yes, that's right.
Tell us about that.
So we were armed with all of these feasibility studies, and every one of them had began with some sort of survey instrument where you gathered from people who are in the community, that they might be food entrepreneurs or food entrepreneurs who already exist, who would want to use this space. But then also a lot of them, because a lot of the products that come out of the kitchen, they need a market, and that's where kitchen incubators also help us with the marketing. So there's usually some part of the survey instrument or a separate survey instrument that gathers market share information. So we worked with the county, and we did actually 3 survey instruments looking into just the general public random sample, you know, who is interested in local food, are any of those people interested in renting a kitchen, of people who are identified already as some sort of food entrepreneur, how many of them would be interested in renting a certified kitchen. And then we also approached, farmers. And all of these samples are from North Central Florida as a whole. Approach the farmers about what about you? You know, would you be interested in a kitchen? But in general, you know, how are you doing selling your local food? Are there other facilities that you need? And so answering some of the questions that the county wanted to know the answer to as well, and at the same time.
So I remember back in 2010, somewhere in that area, you became a nonprofit.
Yes.
Officially. You did a fundraiser, I believe, right?
Well, yes, we did a fundraiser in April of, or it was March of 2010, and then we got the funds to do our 501c3 application, which is almost $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we worked on that, and with some very nice pro bono assistance from several parties, and then we submitted that, and then we received our 501c3 status in January.
And then, keeping in mind that what you learned from visiting the incubators was don't go into a lot of debt.
Right.
I remember there was a push where you started to actively raise money. And I know you told me that you explored a lot of grants without much success in that arena. Is that right?
Yes, I had seen other incubators get funding on different mostly on a grant cycle that was sort of unique for the USDA, where they were allowing bricks and mortar. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the other incubators that I've seen, the money for them all comes from private donors or foundations that are economic development foundations that already exist. Mm-hmm. So there were just a couple examples of folks who had gotten grants from that. But we did look for some time and really couldn't find anything that didn't require at least matching funds to a tune of a sum that would be far beyond what we thought our fundraising capacity would be.
So you did the winter gift fair.
Yeah, we decided that we would always work towards the kitchen incubator, but that we knew that if we just sat around sitting on our hands, that we wouldn't really get much done in the community. And so we started to do programs and do events like the Winter Gift Fair, and that's our event in December. And then also working with Forage Farm to do the farm to restaurant workshop and things of those nature.
Is Forage an acronym, or is it?
It's the name.
Okay,
mm-hmm.
It's the name. It's a good name for a farm.
It is.
And who's involved in Forage?
Forage is Anna Prizia and Melissa Desa.
Okay.
And they do cut flowers and herbs, and you may have seen their beautiful bouquets around.
Yep. And so you raised money, although I know you never raise as much as you want on these special events, but you raised money and raised awareness.
Yes, and mostly awareness,
Uh-huh.
because we never wanted to charge so much that we would preclude people in the community that we wanted to reach from coming, and then also vendors that we would want to attend as well, our events. And those fundraisers were, fundraisers for us, but in small ways. So if we had money left over after the event, and then with our very small operating budget just for minor expenses like paper and that kind of thing, excuse me, then we would put that into our little stash mm-hmm. that would eventually be for the facility.
And Val, then you started doing the farm to restaurant programs, which I found very interesting. Can you explain what those were?
Sure. Farm to restaurant, is Blue Oven and Forage, and also the UF IFAS Small Farms team. They've helped us out a lot. And so we all work together to try to get more local food into local restaurants. And when I first said to Anna that I really wanted to do this, she sort of smirked at me and said, yeah, do you think anybody's going to come? And I said, I hope so. So I said, let's just try it, So we did it at Joe's place in the bar pool room side, and we just moved stuff out of the way. And we wound up having about 60 farmers, restaurateurs, distributors, extension agents, and others attend. And that was our first year in 2010 when we had that in July. And then we've continued every year in either July or August. So this year was our third annual Farm to Restaurant Workshop. And last year, at the just after the first of the year, I asked the farmers who had attended one or the other or both of those workshops, and then I'll do the same again next month, how much money in sales have you done that you can absolutely directly correlate to our work through Farm to Restaurant Workshop. And 5 of them responded, and the total sum that those 5 small farmers had managed to gross was $35,000.
Wow.
And
Impressive.
yes, and one of them was able to hire somebody else. So we know of at least one job that created.
So does that, do you facilitate that communication between farmers and restaurants, or does a farmer just knock on a restaurant door and say, or do they build relationships? And
Well, sometimes farmers go around certainly and knock on doors. What we tried to do, I have a lot of, especially now that I've been doing it for several years, I have a lot of restaurants that come to me and say, I need this. Who do I talk to? Or I have farmers come to me and say, I have this. Who do I talk to? But the workshop it's about networking. There's a little fun thing that we do for breakfast and lunch is that we say, hey farmers, who of you who would like to come would be willing to donate a product for lunch or breakfast? And what would you like to donate? And then we go to the chefs at the restaurants who are attending and say, and in return they get free entrance, no registration. So we say to the restaurants, who would be willing to get the product from the farmer, what product do you want that you might use in your restaurant? And you want a sample basically for free. So then we match them up and they work together and they meet with each other, and then when the farmer drops off the product, and then that's how we do breakfast and lunch.
And are there a good number of restaurants that make the effort to buy local?
Yes, restaurants and caterers were for that workshop we have quite a few that turn up, and some who don't really, to my knowledge, actively make it a point to source a lot locally, but the number of folks who are more interested in the local food is certainly growing. And then with the Farm to Restaurant Workshop, the other thing I wanted to mention is that it really is about education. Right. So whether it's helping the farmers to understand more about spreadsheets and knowing per square inch what their soil costs and so on.
This is a good segue into, I can't believe how many things that you're involved in, Val.
Neither can I.
This is kind of a good segue into Buy Local North Central Florida, which is another pretty massive project that you're involved in, that we've kind of been on the peripheral helping you get the word out when we could. But tell us about Buy Local North Central Florida. Yes,
and we've been grateful for that you all have helped us with pulling that together. And so the Buy Local North Central Florida is again Blue Oven and forage. And it's for all of North Central Florida local and independent businesses. So they have to be, at least 51% of the ownership has to reside within one of the 10 counties of North Central Florida. They cannot be part of a franchise in any way, and they have to be privately owned.
And this is not limited to food service. This
is
just locally owned.
No, but it started that. Excuse me. It started that way, and then we realized that there were other businesses that had approached us that were in no way involved in food, that wanted to, something broader, and so we began that in April of 2011, and we're continuing that, and we recently redid the website and putting the final tweaks on it.
How many businesses are involved in that? Do you know?
Right now, because we've had a couple of others sign up. Right now, I believe it's less than 50. I believe somewhere in the 40s.
So then, after all of this activity and after all of this time, there came a moment where you found a space that might work. When was that?
Well, we had an idea that it might come available over the summer, so we started to plan for it, and if we didn't get it, then we would at least have more funds. So we, in conjunction with the Farm to Restaurant Workshop in August, we realized that we weren't leaving the community out of that, but we wanted to bring the community into what we were doing more. So we did a whole month long. We had the city and county commissions declare August Farm to Restaurant Month. So we did a whole month-long fundraisers, but also educational sorts of events and things for the community. Raised funds through that because we, signed the lease in August. And so we were glad that we had prepared in this way. And so then we have the space, and in August we began, a cursory glance at the place, we thought that it was just, you know, a little bit of gussying up that we needed to do, but as we got more into it, you know, it was a lot more involved with what needed to be done just to make it so that it wasn't, you know, to take all of the pieces away that would be the 10 o'clock at night call from somebody using it to me of the plumbing isn't working, or you know, to try to troubleshoot these things.
So you wanted to get it into a shape where you didn't have to worry about that type of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So how did you start? Obviously you went in and started working on the space. Did you have to buy all of this equipment? Were you able to get donations of equipment, or how did you put it together?
There was, because it's relatively turnkey, it had been inspected before, so all the major components of what the inspectors look for, the 3-basin sink, the hand sinks, you know, the hood and things like that.
Oh, it was already set up?
A lot of that was already
kitchen.
there,
Oh.
yes. A lot of that was already there.
Oh,
and so then we just needed some other pieces of equipment, and we still do. There are still some things that folks need. So there was you know, a stove, and part of the facility was that, you know, over the years that it's quite a few years that it's been in operation, it really hasn't been cared for or cleaned as it should have been. And so one of the things that was the victim of that sort of negligence was the oven that was in there, the stove.
Yeah.
And so one day, you know, I guess they can say good things come from exasperation, because one day I spent 4 hours cleaning the inside of the internal parts of the oven door, and I still didn't get it clean, and I threw down my scraper in this Scarlett O'Hara moment, and I said, I will never clean this oven again. And so I called Stephanie immediately, Stephanie Hamblin, and I said, please get me a list together of oven manufacturers. So she did. And then Imperial wound up being extremely generous with us and said, we will give you, you know, these 2 ovens and ranges for this amount of money. And serendipitously, a private individual who wishes to remain anonymous came to us and said, I would like to give you a focused donation on something very specific that would be very beneficial to you in about this amount of money. And it was the perfect match of the amount of money. So then I immediately called Imperial and said, I'll take those stoves.
You know, I'm a former nonprofit guy too, and I can't tell you how many experiences I had where just at the right moment in time some angel appeared from the heavens and took care of me.
Oh, it was great.
Okay, but now you're up and running, correct?
We are.
You've got, I understand you have a caterer who's taking advantage of your kitchens.
Well, she does, her name is Shalini, and you can see her at the Wednesday Farmers Market, and she does different spice mixes, and she also makes some prepared foods. And so she is in there working, excuse me, weekly before the Farmers Market. And we also have the Pocono Ranch, the water buffalo, that you may happen to have had at the Jones or Civilization. And so they store their meat there. And then we have several others that are waiting till after the first of the year to get inspected, since the permit cycle runs on a calendar year.
And is the size of the kitchen such that you have one business at a time in there, or are multiple people able to work at the same time?
It is possible. It depends on what they're doing. And you know, if people are willing to play ball and share the facility with excuse me, another entity, then we give each 10% off of their rate. But not everybody can do that because of what they're doing. But you know, if they can sort of be divided and work together, as long as we can maintain very clearly the flow of raw food, whatever that means, and prepared and ready to eat food, so there's no cross-contamination, then it's fine.
Yeah. So basically you take a calendar, and if you're interested, you see what time is available, sign up for that time. And
yes, after they sign up with us.
Right. So we're going to be putting your contact information on here, so anyone who's interested in getting food ready for retail or wholesale, purposes can call. We encourage them to call you. Tell me about the Garden Caviar brand. Sounds very exotic.
Okay. Well, before I do that, I want to just say one more thought on folks going to the website, finding more information, and contacting me.
Yeah.
On the website, there's also the document that lists our fees and rates.
Oh, good.
And so they can look and see exactly the ballpark of what they would be charged and how to go about signing up with us. And then also I wanted to say, that the facility is about, in many respects, the entrepreneurs who need to use it, but also I want to encourage people who would like to teach a cooking class, even if they've never taught one before, to contact me, because I really want to encourage more knowledge about our area's foodways and celebrate what's unique about North Central Florida, and not just by the products that can be made and sold, but by people's grandmother's recipes or different processes that people have that they'd like to share.
Good information.
So the Garden Caviar.
Yeah.
So we've always had in our business plan, when we had a facility, to create a branded product, kind of like Newman's Own. People are usually familiar with that, where all the separate company, but all the profits go to nonprofit. But in this case, it's a nonprofit making a product to support itself. So we have, in our downtime in the kitchen, we make what we call a Garden Caviar, and or we call it pesto for a cracker. And so this is our branded product, and right now folks can go to Dorn's and buy it, and which is over in the Millhopper.
Right.
And so what it is we take organic, well, it's interesting because it's like you may never step in the same river, or you never step in the same river twice, but you may never have the same Garden Caviar twice, because we want to make it as local as possible. So right now the mixture of greens is raw Toscano kale, arugula, and Asian mustard greens, organic from Crohn's Cradle, and a variety of other things similar to a pesto.
Well, this time has kind of flown by here, but I know the local food economy is a very important subject for our county commission, for our sustainability office, and it's just great to see folks with their boots on the ground who are helping the local food economy flourish. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Do you think about where you spend your money, where it goes after you spend it, and how that affects your community? Money spent at local and independent businesses stays in your community, and local businesses offer a wide variety of quality services and products. Whatever purchases you make, consider making them at local and independent businesses. When you do, consider it an investment in what you love about your community. Look for the Buy Local North Central Florida logo and visit www.buylocalncf.org.